2 tugboats. That is a detail worth stopping on, because nobody builds a war around capturing tugboats. A tugboat does not fire a shell. It does not carry troops. It nudges bigger ships into harbor and drags them off sandbars. And it is exactly the kind of unglamorous, replaceable vessel that no navy on Earth has ever bothered to protect. And yet, in the Azov Sea this week, tugboats became targets, taken alongside 6 tankers in a single sweep, according to the Ukrainian General Staff. When the tugboats are no longer safe, nothing on the water is. That is the real headline. Not the tonnage destroyed, but the message. The shallow enclosed sea Russia treated as a private lake is now a place where even the maintenance vessels get hunted. This is not a story about 6 ships. It is a story about a supply system being taken apart one link at a time, and about what happens to a war machine when its plumbing starts to fail. How do you strangle a fleet without ever meeting it in a battle? And why is the enclosed, shallow Azov Sea, the one body of water that should have been impossible to reach, suddenly the easiest? Pull back for a second and look at the map, because the Azov Sea was supposed to be the safe room. It is small. It is shallow. It sits behind the Kerch Strait, tucked in against the Russian and occupied coast, far from the open Black Sea, where Ukraine's naval drones made their name. If you were a Russian planner drawing zones of risk, the Azov would have been colored the calm, comfortable color, the place you route the smaller tankers and the cargo runs, precisely because nothing can get at them there. That was the assumption. On the map it held. On the water, it did not. Now zoom in to the level where it actually breaks. These were not warships. They were the small tankers and cargo vessels that keep an occupied coastline fed and fueled. The trucks of the sea, moving in 1s and 2s, lightly crewed, unarmored, built for economy and not for survival. Against a naval drone or an aerial drone with a camera and a warhead, a vessel like that has no answer. It cannot outrun the boat. It cannot outshoot it. It cannot even reliably see it until the water is already streaking on someone's screen and the range is closing. Each one, taken on its own, is a small loss. The point was never any single one. The point is the sum. And here is where the discipline shows. Before these strikes, Ukrainian operators did the same homework they do everywhere. What is the ship? What is it carrying? And, critically, is it empty? The vessels hit were riding high, their waterlines exposed, which is the tell of an empty hull. That matters for 2 reasons. 1, an empty tanker split open in the shallow, closed water of the Azov would poison a sea that barely flushes itself, an ecological wound that would outlast the war. 2, it tells you the target was chosen deliberately, not sprayed at random. This is not chaos. It is bookkeeping, done with warheads. Now for the strangest part of the sourcing, and it says everything about where this stands. A lot of the confirmation does not come from Ukraine at all. It comes from Russian channels, the ones that track their own military's losses and report them, bluntly, to their own audiences. They are the ones writing that Russia lacks the air defense to cover its coastal shipping, that it lacks the resources to stop these attacks, and that the destruction of the commercial fleet in the Azov and the Black Sea is simply an ongoing fact now. When your enemy's own commentators are keeping the tally of your losses because your side has gone quiet, the accounting has already turned against you. The Russian Foreign Minister, Lavrov, reached for the oldest word he could find. Piracy. Worse than piracy, he said, because a pirate at least takes the cargo, while Ukraine only destroys. Sit with that framing for a moment, because it is an admission dressed as an accusation. It concedes that the sea lanes are no longer secure, that vessels flying Russia's commerce cannot count on reaching port, and that a coastline treated as deep rear has become contested water. And it conveniently forgets the mirror. Russia has spent years striking Ukraine's own ports, grain terminals, and coastal infrastructure. Neither side is innocent at sea. What has changed is not the morality, it is the reach. Because the deeper truth here is about logistics, not spectacle. Ships do not win wars by fighting. They win by moving. Fuel, ammunition, food, spare parts, the dull cargo that keeps an army standing. Take apart the vessels that move it, and the guns at the front go quiet on their own schedule, days later, for want of the thing that never arrived. This is the front line nobody films. Not the trench, but the tanker. Not the assault, but the tugboat that was supposed to keep the port working. Break enough of those links, and the map at the front stops meaning what it used to mean. So, let me leave the strategy for a second and put you on one of those decks. Picture the crew of a small Azov tanker. 6, maybe 8 men, civilians in all but name, running a route their fathers might have run, hauling an empty hull back for another load. No warship escorting them. No air cover overhead. Just the sound of the engine, the shallow gray water, and somewhere out past the haze, a boat they cannot see and a camera they will never look into, watching the waterline ride high and marking them as a target that will not become a catastrophe. They did nothing heroic and nothing wrong. They were simply moving. And in this war, on this sea, moving is the dangerous part. That is the real lesson under the wreckage. A modern fleet can be defeated without ever being met in battle, dismantled quietly, vessel by vessel, until the coastline it was built to protect can no longer supply itself. The mechanism is almost boring in its patience. Identify, confirm empty, approach, strike the part that cannot be replaced. Repeat. No single blow decides it. The accumulation does. Which opens the harder question, and there is no settled answer to it. Does Russia try to escort its coastal shipping, spending scarce warships and scarce air defense to guard tugboats and half-empty tankers, and bleeding resources it needs elsewhere? Or does it pull the traffic back, concede the near waters, and accept that an occupied coast can no longer be freely supplied by sea? Two roads. Both cost more than the sea lane ever earned. So here is what I want from you. Of everything a navy owns, which loss actually hurts more in a war like this? The warship that fights, or the humble vessel that hauls? Tell me in the comments, because I think the answer surprises people. If you want the war explained through the parts most channels skip, the logistics, the plumbing, the links that quietly decide everything, then like this one, pass it to someone who still thinks battles are won at the front, and subscribe so the next breakdown reaches you. Take care of yourself, and clear skies out there.